Hello everybody and welcome to my second Q&A. This time we have quite a lot more questions here than last year, so let's get started right now. First off, Poopy Snoopy asked, Standard 5 or Stanier 5? Probably the Standard 5 because while I do really like the Black 5 or Stanier 5s, I'm impressed that there were still steam engines being built for British Rail even after the beginning of dieselization, at least beginning of dieselization here in the US. Lucas M asked, Southern or Southern Railway? I'd say the Southern Railway considering all the cool steam engines it had, especially the green 462s, especially those that were used on the Crescent. 119 or Jupiter? Probably the Jupiter. Pensifan 19 or Cal Unit Productions? I'd say Cal Unit Productions, considering a lot of the videos and documentaries that he's made. Sorry if you're Pensifan 19, by the way, no offense to you. You still have made quite a couple of good videos, especially your monthly news series. Andro asked, in your opinion, what would be the best European train that can beat American engines? Okay, since that question is a bit vague considering you don't say whether it's in terms of speed or horsepower, I'm gonna assume you're talking about horsepower and say probably the Vectrons. RoboStrike1 asked, am I cool? I'm sure you are, RoboStrike. Spiral Hill Railfan asked, ALP44 or AEM7? I would say the AEM7, considering how much it had been used by both Amtrak and other systems along the Northeast Corridor. But I still like the ALP-44s. Geist asked, do I have model trains? Yes, I do. I have this G-scale layout in my basement, and I do have some HO trains, but I haven't taken them out in a while, and I still need to find some time to take them out. Somehow. I also have plenty of wooden trains in case those count as well. Turner D-Do asked, what is my favorite video game involving trains? As of now, I would say Railroader. CB&Q or Crip? Link hentai addict. I'd probably say the CB&Q, especially since I have really liked the streamliners that they have had over the years, and especially because I've seen a few, one of their engines, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy 5629, at the Colorado Railroad Museum. Have I played Derail Valley? No, I have not played Derail Valley, but I want to play Derail Valley sometime soon. What is my opinion on the vandalized CSX and NS units? For the 3 CSX vandalized heritage units with chassis, RF&P, and L&N paint, I will admit, even though they are vandalism, at least they got some details right and are still at least better than something like this. Or this. But I'm going to say this here, and I wouldn't say that they're better than the actual CSX heritage units. Oh, come on!
We've been working on the railroad every Amtrak day. Making travel nice and easy all across the USA.
Particularly because, well, there's only like 10% of the engine painted compared to 80% on the actual CSX units. As for the Norfolk Southern vandalized unit, I would say I kinda am not sure whether this could be going past CSX and heading for NS, because even though NS does have heritage units, and these heritage units that people would say are proper, I kind of don't really understand why somebody would vandalize a NS unit when NS has units that people, for the most part, really like. But at least the 4 nose units are better than something like this. Still, nothing beats the Pepsi can heritage unit. Which public transport system is the best in my opinion? I would say the MTA, considering all of its coverage and how many miles of track and rail that it owns, both in terms of commuter rails and subway, and hopefully in the future, light rail. What is my favorite UP heritage unit? It would be a tie between the Union Pacific 1989 and the Union Pacific 1996, since I'm a fan of both the Rio Grande and the Southern Pacific. Where did I hide the bodies? I hid them at this location on the screen right here. AJ asked, what is my least favorite video on my channel? My least favorite video on my channel is this one video from when I made my 2018 trip on the California Zephyr.
My 18th birthday, I filled out my own dropout.
Okay, now we're going to pass the eastbound California Zephyr. It's over there. First engine is P42 DC number 45. Second, another P42 DC number 152. There's the baggage car, crew car, deluxe sleeper. Wait, that's deluxe sleeper. I have died of cringe each time. What is my opinion on the Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range Railroad? Well, I think it's a really cool railroad, especially the fact that it hauled primarily ore, and because of that, it had these really cool 2884s. And it's nice that a couple of 2884s were preserved, especially since the 2884s had kind of terrible luck when it came to preservation. Especially the fact that the EM1s almost got preserved, but even after 3 attempts, it wasn't preserved in the end. Though it would be cool if one DMR Yellowstone got restored and went head-to-head with the 4014. That would be an amazing sight to see. Kamapo123 asked, E unit or F unit? I'd say the E units, especially considering about how common they were and what paint schemes they would have had, and sometimes the cabs would often look like this. So I definitely prefer the E unit over the F unit. What's a railroad museum or heritage line you haven't visited but would like to? Definitely the Illinois Railway Museum in Illinois. And if that isn't possible, then the Mount Rainier Scenic Railroad. Would I have liked to see the Milwaukee Road's electrified extension be preserved as a tourist line? Yes, I would love to see the Milwaukee Road's Pacific extension still in active service. Tourist line, or if it's just in mainline operations, like if it were under CPKC or something. Favorite Splatoon idol? Marie for sure. She has that kind of sassiness about her that I just can't really describe, but it's really funny. And am I aware of the oncoming freight train that is about to collide with my house? Wait, what the fuck? Ah! One-fourth of an idiot asked, will I ever do a visit to the Poconos or even just a video on Steamtown? I kinda have thought of maybe doing something on Steamtown, maybe an engine that's there, but as of now, I am not in the mood or with the right knowledge for any of that. As for a Poconos visit, I have thought of trying to go and see Reading 2102, so maybe one day if I do learn to drive, if and when I do learn to drive, and if I do go to the east, maybe I'll go and see the 2101 and visit the Poconos. But right now, only time will tell. Could I solo SpongeBob? I have taken karate classes until COVID hit, so maybe I could solo SpongeBob. I'd just have to try it for myself to see if I actually can. How much better do I think I'm doing against other YouTubers? I think I'm doing at least somewhat decently, at least when it comes to like making videos. But since I'm not the type of documentary or news type like Pensy Fan or Cal Unit Productions, I kind of feel like maybe I should try something that would kind of like up my game against other YouTubers. But otherwise, I'm doing decently alright, and I'm definitely doing better than a lot of the other people who just throw in all meme compilations on their channels and call it a day. Do I plan to get model trains, and if so, what scale? I do have a lot of model trains right now, but as of now I don't plan on getting any. But if I were to get any, then I'd probably go with either HO or G scale models, since those are what I currently have. Would I ever try out any of the Borderlands games, considering there's a Borderlands 4 and a movie announced for the future? Probably, though if I like it a lot, that would make it a definitely. Alexander the Funny Man asked, what is my favorite UK engine? The British Rail Class 43 HST, not the other Class 43, that one sucked. New Hope and Ivyland 280 number 40 asked, will I ever plan to see the PRT-1 in operation when it's completed? Yes, absolutely. And I would honestly like to be there to see if the PRT-1 is able to beat the world Steam speed record that's currently held by Mallard. Would be fun to be there if the speed record is broken. If I start a model train railroad, what will be my first locomotive? I do have somewhat of a model layout in my basement, but if I ever do one of those big outdoor model layouts, or just one of those huge indoor model layouts that you see in some videos, then I'd probably go with a G-scale Amtrak P42DC. A friend of mine has seen our convos a few times and dared me to ask if I ever played Genshin Impact, and if so, what was my favorite character. I don't actually play Genshin Impact, but I would be lying if I wasn't interested in any of the characters. And if I did have a favorite, I would definitely pick Kokomi. Lastly, am I having a good day? So far, yeah. Things have been going alright so far. I got off of work and had some good dinner from my grandma. That's all, and here's a cookie. Thanks.
IDKY Genshin, but that's what he dared me to say.
I'm a train asked, Alco or EMC early diesels? Alco. I don't know why, but they just seem cooler than some of the early EMC diesels. NYC or PRR?
New York Central.
Favorite game? So far, Metal Gear Solid 3. If I liked any Japanese train, what would it be besides the D-51? The C-62. Freddy the Man asked, what's my favorite Amtrak route? The California Zephyr. What's my favorite subway system? The Chicago L, in case you count those as a subway, but they do have the blue and red lines which do go underground for quite a bit. What's my favorite commuter rail? Caltrain. What's my opinion on B units? They were definitely a type of unit that were really helpful in the early days of the diesel being commonplace, but kinda sucks that they're mainly non-existent these days. And Long Island Railroad or Metro North? Metro North. Builds Bricks 1 asked, Q, A. Q and A. There you go. SLU 1904 asked, 1. Osaka. 2. Osaka. Frisco Foamer 1522 asked, opinion on Penn Central? Well, a lot of people say that Penn Central was pretty much screwed from the beginning, but I honestly kind of don't think that Penn Central probably would have survived if the Pennsy brass weren't the guys who took over most of the management. And I believe that if more the New York Central brass were in charge of Penn Central, and especially listened to Alfred E. Perlman more, then Penn Central probably would have lasted a lot longer than it actually did. Besides, the Erie Lackawanna almost kinda got successful until, well, bad luck screwed it over. So I kind of feel that Penn Central probably would have lasted a lot longer than it actually did in our timeline if the brass had just listened to Alfred E. Perlman more. Okay, now let's get into YouTube questions. BNSF Real Fan asked, okay, I have a few questions. 1. Do I have any pets? Yes, I do. I have this one cockatiel that we named Mellow. I also used to have these 3 other cockatiels that I got in 2013, but 2 of them were killed in 2015, and we got our current cockatiel to compensate for the loss of both of those cockatiels. And then the 3rd cockatiel that I had from 2013, well, in 2022, my grandma scared her, and the door was open, and the cage that we kept them in was next to that door. She escaped, and after trying to get her back, she was gone for good, and she's probably dead already, and probably became hawk food. And I'm still getting for revenge, I'm getting a cat next time. What's my favorite railroad? The BNSF. Also tied with Canadian Pacific. And what is my favorite paint scheme from any railroad? Phase 7 from Amtrak. Isaac's Workshop said, this is the greatest way to do anything, just sing it to roll call. Aaron Arroyo SN4UI asked, what is by far my favorite ATSF locomotive? ATSF 3751. Why did I start making videos and when? I started making videos because a lot of other channels had inspired me to start posting videos, and initially the videos I posted were just phone camera footage videos of trains that I had recorded. My first video was of the RTD R line from Dayton Station to Peoria Station, although that was split into 2 videos. If I fill an HO scale boxcar with gunpowder and throw it at my wall, will my house explode? Unless you throw it at like a gas line inside of your house, I don't think your house will explode if you throw an HO boxcar with gunpowder and throw it at your wall. I don't exactly know how much force gunpowder would need to make a gunpowder explode, but if the gunpowder were to explode and you threw it at a wall, I think that that wall would probably just weaken the structural integrity of your house, and then your parents would get angry and your house would probably be structurally compromised, which would have to force you to go elsewhere. Either way, I don't think that is a good thing to try, because it could, like, hurt a part of your life. That's all from me. Have a wonderful day, and remember to train yourself to be a rail fan. Thank you, Aaron. Sudrian Guy asked, do I like GP locomotive? Yes, I do like Jeeps, especially because of how they can either be low hood or high hood Jeeps, and especially the fact that a lot of Jeeps have lasted so long into service, and even though quite a couple have likely already been scrapped, a lot of them are still in use even today. Is GE sucks? Well, I can't guarantee that for sure because I'm not a railroad worker, but GE locomotives have been pretty useful for railroads over the past couple of decades, especially the fact that all the freight railroads own GEVOs and had also owned Dash 9s and in some cases AC 4400 CWs, some of those of which are being rebuilt. So I feel like a lot of railroads think that GE engines are somewhat reliable. Not to mention, Amtrak has been using a certain GE locomotive for the past couple of decades, and while a lot of rail fans, mainly F40PH foamers, really hate that certain engine, Amtrak has kept on using it and will likely press it until the Chargers completely replace the Genesis. Also, as a quick side note, I kind of think that GE power is underrepresented in railroad museums. Probably because a lot of railroad museums might be run by EMD supremacists. Do I like GP7s or GP9s? Although I like both the GP7 and GP9s, well, I kind of generally like most engines in general. I think I'd prefer the GP9 over the GP7. And what am I doing every days? Well, making a living and generally, like, doing typical life things, although every once in a while I do something different from the everyday grind. And maybe every once in a while go on a vacation. Newswatch 160 official asked, do I ever plan on visiting anywhere east of Colorado, specifically in places like Strasburg, and maybe if I get lucky, Scranton? Well, I do have hopes that next year maybe I'll go to the east and take a ride on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. after I finish my junior year of college. Though if that does happen, for the most part it's going to be to head to mainly the Western Maryland, hopefully. If not, film CSX trains, mostly, if not Norfolk Southern. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Alco locomotives? I would rate them a pissing off environmentalists out of 10. If I had the money too, what locomotive would I make a new build of here in the US? The Baltimore and Ohio EM1s. I don't know, there's something about them that I really like, and it honestly sucks that even after 3 different tries, the EM1s did not make it into preservation. Although I did hear that one bell from an EM1 survives, but it's just a bell. It is just a bell and not the full locomotive. Somebody probably wouldn't know it was from an EM1 unless you told someone so. But yeah, an EM1 is something that I would like to make a new build if I had the money. How would I rate the moderation team for my server? 8 out of 10 right now, I guess. Though, at least I'm thankful that this isn't the time when I made the mistake of hiring him as a moderator. And do I plan to play Undertale, and if so, what route would I do first? Well, actually, back in 2019, I did actually purchase Undertale on my Switch, but I only managed to get it to the goat when... I forgot her name, sorry. But I only got to the goat when she demanded me to not leave, and I got cold feet, and so I stopped it, but hopefully soon maybe I'll go back to playing Undertale, and maybe I'll live stream it or something, but I'm not sure which route to take though whenever I do start playing Undertale again though. Well, hopefully I'll start playing Undertale again not that far off soon. Caledonian Railway 1233 asked, what are my thoughts on Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari? I'm not a car enthusiast guy, so I don't really have much of an opinion on that. Why are America locos so slow? Because in 1946, a crash occurred that was caused by scheduling, and the ICC decided that that crash was because of speeding, and therefore it was a good idea to put in a 79-mile-per-hour speed restriction. I'm sorry. That crash just makes me so angry. The decisions made by that crash just make me so angry. I genuinely want to change that, but I do not know how. All I can do now is write the letter to the FRA to kill that restriction. And yeah, there are places where Amtrak is getting better speeds, like in Illinois, but still, passenger rail in America downfalled in America because of that stupid speed restriction. And I'm sorry, it's hard to hold my cool when I talk about Naperville and that speed restriction. That stupid 79-mile-per-hour speed restriction. I genuinely get angry when I talk about that. CPR 4104 asked, favorite fallen flag and loco from that railway? My favorite fallen flag are a tie between the Rio Grande and the Southern Pacific. And my favorite locomotive, or locomotives, are the SD40T-2 for the Rio Grande and the AC4400CW for the Southern Pacific. What are my opinions on Canadian Pacific? No, not CPKC, I hate it. Well, I think that Canadian Pacific had been a really major player in the economy of Canada and still has, or at least had. I think their steam engines were probably the coolest part, especially the fact that they had these 210-4s. And it's nice that they brought one back to service in the last years of its living life. But as for the CPKC part, I kind of feel like CP Rail actually intended the merger to be a buyout of KCS. However, much like the CN and IC merger in 1999, however, somewhere between the CN and IC merger and the CP and KCS merger, there was some kind of law that stated that if some company from another country were to buy out a company in America, then it'd have to be labeled as like a merger and have a new name, not a buyout. And so it kind of sucks that CP Rail, ridded their name for that really weird name there, CPKC. Why do I like the fallen flag I named earlier? Well, I like both the Rio Grande and the Southern Pacific because, the Rio Grande is home territory for me, and the Southern Pacific also at one point for the last 8 years of its existence owned the Rio Grande. And the Rio Grande also had a lot of narrow gauge and quite a couple of standard gauge engines too. Unfortunately, all but one of the standard gauge engines aren't with us anymore, except for a tender that probably still exists in Pueblo, Colorado. Particularly because when the Rio Grande dieselized, their finances were up shit's creek. And the Rio Grande also had tunnel motors, the SD40T-2, which are some of the coolest EMD products to date. As for the Southern Pacific, I like them for their cab-forward locomotives and the daylight, and especially their 482 mountains, which unfortunately don't exist today. Honestly, the Southern Pacific 482 mountains are a mountain type that I really wish was preserved. A close second would be Union Pacific's mountain types. The Southern Pacific's 482 mountains have a style to them that I really like. Maybe it's with the skyline casing, but I'm not sure. It would have been nice if at least one of the Southern Pacific 482 mountains were preserved. Also about the Southern Pacific, I really like the schemes that they put onto their AC4400 CWs. They were reminiscent to, at least the logo they put on it on the sides of the AC4400 CWs were a inspiration of the Rio Grande speed lettering, which the Southern Pacific bought out. So yeah, that's why the Rio Grande and the Southern Pacific are my two favorite fallen flag railroads. And I kind of wish that one or both of them were still around. John Schuster YC6DP asked, "What is my favorite color?" It is definitely blue, because of Amtrak. And also some anime girls. what's my opinion on GPSD? The EMD Jeeps and the SD series engines, both from EMD, are pretty cool and pretty reliable. Excuse me. But for the most part, I like the EMD SD70 Max as my favorite SD locomotive. And I like the GP39s as my favorite GP locomotive. Oh, sorry, Jeep. Yeah, that's a better name. What is better, Wisconsin Central or Wisconsin Southern? Wisconsin Southern because they let the Sioux Line 1003 run on their tracks. And it's always nice when a railroad allows a steam engine or steam engines to run on their line. It's really fun. Lou2 asked, in terms of rail transportation, what's the best country/area for that? I'd say the best countries would probably be both Japan and Switzerland. For Japan, I think trains are just ingrained in their ways of going about, because I heard that the Japanese railways transport about half of Japan's population every day. As for Switzerland, it's because that you can even make it to high in the mountains without even needing a bus or car, because Switzerland has cog railways, which can make it upgrades that conventional trains can't make it on, which I find to be the coolest part. Apart from trains and anime, what other things do I also like?
Well, it's about time somebody recognized that I like anime.
I also like airplanes, with my favorite airplanes being trijets, mainly the 727 of Boeing and the DC-10 of McDonnell Douglas.
Fight me!
In addition to that, I also like adult cartoons, mainly King of the Hill and South Park, though I have also seen The Simpsons and Family Guy and American Dad. The last two I watched with a friend on Hulu several years back. And I miss you, Jaden. Rest in peace. And I especially like video games, mainly those on Steam in my computer, as well as those on my Nintendo Switch. For the Nintendo Switch, my favorite game is Splatoon 3, and for the computer, my favorite game is the Metal Gear Solid series.
Please, Konami, bring Metal Gear Solid 4 to Steam!
I also like to play Frisbee with the boys at college. For me, which is the best steam engine through history? Southern Pacific's cab forwards, although the big boys would be a close second. The cab forwards had an unusual style to them, which many probably would have considered weird back then, but after years, the cab forwards proved themselves, especially with crews and with Southern Pacific's freight tonnage over mountains like Donner Pass and the Shasta Line in Northern California. Genesis Railfan 1507 asked, thoughts on the Amfleets getting retired? I think that kind of sucks that a fleet that has been a staple of Amtrak's appearance is now going to go away after half a century of service, but I kind of think that it's a bit for the better. And besides, the Amfleets are a bit past their prime and probably need a huge rest, especially after all those regional trains and long-distance trains. Especially since the Amfleet 2s will also be retired in favor of a new fleet. But there is a good chance that several heritage railways, if not Transoceanico or Via Rail, could get a hold of a couple of the AM fleets. So maybe not all hope will be lost for the AM fleets that Amtrak currently has. But it is sad that they're going to be retired from Amtrak. But hopefully the Siemens Ventures and whatever other fleet Amtrak orders to replace the Am Fleet 2s will hopefully be able to keep Amtrak stable for the next several decades, if not the next half century, the same amount of time that the AM fleets have been in service. Thoughts on Hit Era Thomas on PBS Retro, Roku channel? Since I don't have Roku, I can't exactly express my full opinions on that, but it's nice that older Thomas episodes are getting some spotlight on some streaming services. Favorite Headmaster Hastings song? I think my favorite Headmaster Hastings song would be the song that he made of James's theme.
Take a look who's coming down the track. Make way for James, hooray for James. A shiny paint with a jet black stack. Make way for James, hooray for James. What is for certain and we really should note, it's indisputable. Let's take over. He's the really splendid engine with a bright red coat.
Overused question. SD7DA7-2 or GEVO? I like both engines, and unlike most rail fans, I do really like the GEVOs. But if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick the SD7DAs or SD7DM-2s. And is my scruncher scrunched? Yes, my scruncher indeed is scrunched. Zachary Train Guy asked, what is the best train that you have catched in my opinion? I think the best train that I have catched in recent years would be when the California Zephyr was led by Amtrak units 160 and 174. What is the worst railroad in my opinion? A lot of people in this regard would normally say Penn Central, but in my honest opinion, the worst railroad company is the Montreal Main and Atlantic Railway. I mean, the Penn Central never had an accident which killed people in the double digits, and yet Montreal Main and Atlantic had an accident that killed so many people, and they went bust from that. Good fucking riddance. Also, as a bit of a side note, considering the fact that the original line was owned by the Canadian Pacific, and Canadian Pacific sold it off during the railroad, and most of the other class ones is, we're gonna sell off this random line that will totally not be useful to us in the future eventually phase. And I genuinely believe that if Canadian Pacific had not sold off the line from Montreal to the East Coast, then the accident at Lac Mégantic would not have occurred. Yes, there's Lucifer, Hunter Harrison, was CEO of Canadian Pacific when the disaster occurred, but I doubt that Hunter Harrison would have been stupid enough to tie trains down
On the main line.
SD40s or SD40-2s? SD40-2s, considering the fact that the SD40-2s would result in the SD40T-2 tunnel motor engines, which I like. What is the worst decision Amtrak has made? I think the worst decision Amtrak has made was the decision to put Thomas Downs as its CEO from 1993 to 1998. Thomas Downs cut route after route, but those kinds of routes would have been the routes that Amtrak could have made money using the mail and express business, and Thomas Downs should have used the mail and express business that Amtrak had at the time to use on the routes that he believed weren't making money, like the Desert Wind, Pioneer, Broadway Limited, you name it. But no, he needed to cut almost all of those routes because they just were not making money. He could have used the freight business to have the routes make money, purchase more equipment to have the routes like the Desert Wind and Pioneer be daily, but no. He had to cut them all. Well, not all of them, but still. In essence, I genuinely believe that Thomas Downs is Amtrak's version of Richard Beeching. Fortunately, with the new long-distance study, it looks like the FRA and Amtrak could bring a lot of those routes that Downs cut back into operation, mainly the Desert Wind and Pioneer. Still, I believe that if those routes were not cut, then they'd still prove somewhat valuable even after the mail and express business was cut by David Gunn. But no, Downs cut pretty much all of them, and they're not in existence anymore. But hopefully the FRA study will get Amtrak to revive some, if not all of those routes. What is my opinion on a GEES 44AC? I do like the GEES 44ACs because they just get the job done. I know that a lot of people hate the GEVOs because they're so common, but let's be real. The railroads don't exist to appeal to 12-year-olds. The railroads exist to transport freight and to some extent passengers across the countries. And for the freight part, the ES44AC is really valuable for transporting freight. So the ES44ACs just get the job done. That's what the railroads are designed to do. Get the job done. That one 1958 Plymouth Fury asked, have I ever heard of Little River Railroad 110? I think so, but now that you mention it, I do now. So, yeah, that engine is quite a nice Pacific. What is my opinion on Penn Central? Well, a lot of people say that Penn Central was pretty much screwed from the beginning, but I honestly kind of don't think that Penn Central probably would have survived if the Pennsy brass weren't the guys who took over most of the management. And I believe that if more of the New York Central brass were in charge of Penn Central, and especially listened to Alfred E. Perlman more, then Penn Central probably would have lasted a lot longer than it actually did. Besides, the Erie Lackawanna almost kinda got successful until, well, bad luck screwed it over. So I kind of feel that Penn Central probably would have lasted a lot longer than it actually did in our timeline if the brass had just listened to Alfred E. Perlman more. And do I like the CPKC AWVR paint scheme? It does look nice, but I'm not gonna lie, the CPKC paint scheme does look like something that if AWVR was a real railroad, then they'd probably utilize on AC 4400 CWs, -9s, and other wide cap GEs. Your local Texan 126RD1PB asked, what do I think of the Roblox train cartoon? Which train cartoon? NeedleFox852 asked, should NYC and PRR have merged? If not, why? Well, I think that the New York Central and the PRR should have merged with the railroads that they actually had good relations with. In the PRR's case, they had good relations with the N&W, and they should have merged with them. And for the NYC, I think they had good relations with either the C&O or the B&O. I don't remember which one, but they probably would have had a good relationship there and probably had a better merger through there. But if neither of those went through and the NYC and PRR needed to merge, well, I honestly don't believe that they should have merged the way they were when the actual Penn Central happened. Because they were, I think the staff at both railroads were trained to literally hate each other and had no real connections until when Penn Central happened. So, not in that way, but they should have had some time to know each other, interchange cars, and be friendly like the Erie and the Lackawanna railroads did before they merged and became Erie-Lackawanna. Is Amtrak still good? Well, that is debatable. I'd say yes, but I do think that Amtrak needs a good amount of improvement. Mainly in terms of their fleet and connectivity, but they are certainly doing exactly that with the fleet. And connectivity, and on the Northeast Corridor, they're providing better frequencies, so I think Amtrak is improving somewhat. Who is your least favorite engine or car? Okay, since that question is a little vague, and I'm just gonna assume that you mean what is my least favorite engine or car, and go from there. I'm going to say what my least favorite locomotive is. My least favorite locomotive is the BQ23-7, because, well, look at the cab! What the heck is that? Western Ohio Interurban History asked, who is Joe? Joe Ryden. Have I been to Applebee's? Now I can officially say yes. What is my favorite animal? Cat. Because chassis system.
I'm losing it right now.
Tyler M666 asked, what is my opinion on the new Via Siemens Chargers and Go Transit refurbished old cab cars? I think that Via Rails' Siemens Chargers are the best looking Chargers of all the Charger variants. And honestly, I think that Via Rails' Charger design has taken inspiration from Brightline's Charger design. I mean, just look at the two side by side. And since I actually rode behind a Via Rail Siemens Charger set, it really looks nice. And the Venture cars and cab car that the Via Rail Siemens Chargers pull look really nice and are really comfortable too, at least in business class. As for Go Transit refurbishing some of their old bi-level cab cars, it's nice that Go Transit is still somewhat appreciative and supportive of their older bi-level cab cars, instead of just completely abandoning them for the sus cab cars. No, seriously, Go Transit and the rest of the CEM cab cars look like a Mogus. Mooney Thomas Boy asked, was my opinion on Mooney streetcars still using floppy disks? Mooney streetcars are still using what? Oh my god, I'm genuinely surprised that there are still systems that still use floppy disks, but if it works, I guess, but I think that the Mooney streetcars could use quite a bit of upgrading from just the floppy disks. Hudson Fan 5426 asked, "Was my opinions on Metra 218?"
It is really cool!
Zane the Rail Fan asked, "Thoughts on me seeing Big Boy on July 12th and 13th?" Well, since it's well past July 12th and 13th at this point, I hope you were able to take quite a good amount of video and photos of the Big Boy. Who knows, maybe you got lucky then, but hopefully you had a good time seeing the Big Boy. The Big Boy has yet to pass through where I live again. But I do hope to see the Big Boy once again, even if I had already seen it 3 times already. Although I still hope that Ed Dickens and the rest of the UP Steam crew are able to bring the 844 back. Because it would be nice to see 844 back after quite some time. The GS4 4449 asked, "Opinion on Conrail?" I think Big Blue, aka Conrail, has been one of the coolest northeastern railroads. Especially the fact that they were able to get the northeastern railroads out of a really crummy situation after the Penn Central merger, at least the way it went poorly. While I cannot guarantee that Conrail would have been absolutely perfect if Conrail had stayed alive past 1999, I think it still would have been quite a nice sight to have 5 Class 1 railroads in America rather than 4. And while a lot of people want Conrail back, and I'll admit I do somewhat want Conrail back, a good amount of those people who want Conrail back are people who support railroad nationalization, and I do have an entire video on why that, as of now, that probably wouldn't be the greatest idea to improving rail in America. But I do think that if Conrail were to return, it should return to compete with both Norfolk Southern and CSX. Gavin Likes Trains 9314 asked, "What are my opinions on 2-foot gauge?" Oh boy, another opinion question. 2-foot gauge is... well, I think that 2-foot gauge has really helped some railroads, like it helped the Grand Trunk Pacific build its main line to the west coast of Canada before it went bust and was nationalized into Canadian National anyways. But yeah, I think 2-foot gauge is a bit of an underrated gauge system across the world. Yeah, there are quite a few, there have been a handful of 2-foot gauge railroads, but they didn't come into common use. But they were good in places like quarries and the like. And even today, they're still good at things like zoo trains or some tourist lines, as here in Colorado, there is the Cripple Creek and Victor Narrow Gauge Railroad, which uses a 2-foot train. And there is, or at least was, the Omaha Zoo Railroad, which used, I think, a 2-foot gauge locomotive from Austria. At least according to America by Rail. And finally, After Party Goer asked, "Opinion on Dahara 521?" I think a lot of Dahara 521's videos were pretty cool, especially the Train Z videos that don't even need to give you a hint that it's from Train Z. It just says the title of the story that's the video's about, and that's it. And some of his videos are pretty cool. I especially like the residual haunting video, but it is a shame that the Hara521 hasn't uploaded since at least 2017 or 18, and if he's quit YouTube, then I hope the Hara521 is doing alright as of now. Hopefully he's having a decent life outside of YouTube, and I genuinely hope that he's doing good. Well, that's been all the questions for this Q&A for 2024. Though, before I end this Q&A video, I will be a bit merciful to some of the people who asked questions in my official Q&A answer video just this once. Next time, you'll have to wait another year. Sears Enthusiast asked, what is my favorite railroad company? As mentioned earlier, BNSF and Canadian Pacific. King Koopa 64 asked, opinion on cars in general? Cars are definitely useful for when you want to go somewhere. And honestly, it's really nice when you're taking a relaxed car drive through the mountains and aren't worrying about anything like having to go somewhere immediately. But I don't think cars should be our primary method of transport all the time, and therefore we need more buses and especially trains. More trains, definitely. Trainboy587 asked, what is my favorite steam locomotive? The 844. Do I like Norfolk Southern? Yeah, but not as much as some others. And what is my favorite heritage unit from Unipac, Norfolk Southern, NJT, CSX, and CanPac? Unipac, 1989 and 1996. Norfolk Southern, 1071. NJ Transit, 4109. CSX, back then I would have said 1869, but now I would say 1899. Also to CSX, bring 1899 behind 1225 for an excursion for once. And for CanPac, although their heritage units are for the most part the same livery, I'd say 7013. Although a CP Rail does make heritage units like the Milwaukee Road or the DM&D or the IC&E, I'd definitely state my opinions on them. Okay, now the Q&A is officially over. Thank you for asking questions to me this year. Hopefully next year I'll also host another Q&A so that you can ask other questions, and so that any new subscribers could also ask questions about me, what I like, my opinions, and all that. Thank you all for watching this video despite how long it is, and until next time, have a good day!